it's not the writer's job to tell the director how to make the story the most compelling it can be.
So the writers of Homeland, they didn't want to change it, or they felt that the way it was written was fine, the two sisters?
Well, this opens up a lot of questions which I think are really features of collaborative creativity that I find fascinating. They had written the script and felt good about it. They thought it worked in a certain way, and they told me the way they thought it worked. But it's so interesting. You know, in features generally, I think in general terms, in features, the director is more the one empowered to kind of make a lot of the creative decisions. In series television, it's weighted much more towards the writer and the showrunner, so that the interesting challenge in coming into a series is I have to be serving the vision of the showrunner. I can't change that. That's not my place. But I can bring. But what's interesting is that the writer has to would be better off, I think, if they acknowledge. Will certainly get greater creative contributions from others if they acknowledge that their work has to be interpreted. A script is really a fleshless blueprint when you think about it. It's words on a page. You know, I mean, I say in the book, it's like there's no such thing as filming the script. That would be pictures of words on a page. You have to, you have to interpret it. You have to give, the actors have to bring their understanding of what's going on. You have to dig deep for the kinds of inner life and subtext and intentions that I've been describing. And it's not really the writer's. The writer delivers a script that they felt good about, which is in this case they did, and it turned out to be great. Now, I gave it a subtext and an inner life that they hadn't imagined, but what fascinates me is I wouldn't have arrived at my understanding of what the scene could be if the script had been written any differently. I looked at the speech Maggie gives, and she references her pain from childhood. And that was a way that my experience in life, my understanding of how human beings work, led me to bring my own experience to it, to ask the question, to explore myself, what those kind of issues and words evoked. And they evoked in me the possibility that that may not just be in the past, it might be now also. So without a word changing, I came to that understanding, and it was a clue embedded in the dialogue itself, which the writers did not consider consciously was even there. But I believe, and there's another chapter I write on an episode of The Americans, where a very similar total transformation happened without changing a word. In that chapter I call Rewriting the Subtext. The Homeland chapter I call Making Meaning, which is really what I felt I was doing. It's not the writer's job to tell the director how to make the story the most compelling it can be. The writer provides a script that they feel good about. That's what these writers did. It's my job to interpret it and to translate it in a way that feels meaningful to me, that I believe the audience is going to respond to. So that's one thing I really value about series television directing, is the limitations I'm given, because it's like a feature with unlimited budget. If you can't do something, it's easy to solve a problem by throwing money at it or giving more days to shoot or whatever. But when you have limitations, often that can inspire creative solutions, because sometimes we take the path of least resistance. Well, the only way to do that is to shoot 2 extra days, or to have 1,000 extra extras or whatever. But wait, you can't. Oh, so how can I solve it another way? There's a story I tell in the book too that may be apocryphal, but it's funny, I was an assistant director for Francis Coppola, but this is a story about Francis that I'd heard that, there's in Godfather 2, when young Vito comes to Ellis Island, there's a very iconic shot of, before I tell about that shot, the story anyway is that Francis wanted to build a set that would be for Ellis Island that would somewhere look out on the Statue of Liberty, so that you could have young Vito staring out at the Statue of Liberty. Well, that was impossible, and the budget didn't allow for it. So the solution that they came up with was to have young Vito come to the window and stare out, and in the glass there was a reflection of the Statue of Liberty, which was a picture of the Statue of Liberty, a backing, And that was a beautiful poetic image. You united in one image, the Statue of Liberty in the face of young Vito. And it's like, if he could have just thrown money at it and just done it that way, he would have told the story, but it wouldn't have had that. He wouldn't have had that poetic shot. So all of this points to me the fascinating collaborative quality that we all bring our own talents, we all bring our own ways of seeing. I feel this way when an actor shows me something I never would have imagined. An actor. I've had experiences where I've fully prepped. I believe in that tremendously. How important it is for a director to really explore as much as you can in prep, to really find out all the nuances you think are there, to figure out a staging, which I prefer not to impose. I like the actors to find it, but I will tend to, I will want to make sure the staging is going to be something that tells the story in behavior as well as in the dialogue, so I can help guide the actors to finding that. Or if I have to, if there are time constraints and I have to impose a staging right away, I can do it. I have it in my. So I think being fully prepared. Some directors actually think, well, no, I want to be creative in the moment. I find I can be so much more creative in the moment the more prepared I am, because I've thought about what is the key moment, what is the issue here, and I've come up with a solution to bring that about. But if someone comes up with a better solution and I can and I understand how that will enhance this other moment, will actually deepen the meaning, I can employ it, I can use it, I can incorporate it. So all of this is to say, I guess, that I so value the collaboration that filmmaking entails. And as far as the writers, they're within their rights not to change the script. They're performing their function. If you're not a particularly talented writer, you may hamstring your collaborators in ways that are unfortunate. But in this case, I had very talented writers, Alex Gonza and Ron Neiswaner, I think, was the writer for this particular episode. They were tapping into a part of their unconscious, I would say, which is really where creativity originates. And even though they weren't necessarily conscious of the possibilities they revealed to me, I, from my own experience, was able to discern what I wanted to do with it.
And how much do you consider the audience, especially for, let's say, a show like Homeland, where you said there were other episodes where that was really what the audience wanted, kind of?
Yeah, another really interesting element to me of series directing is coming in as a director, one has to respect the audience's prior experience and their set of expectations. So that can manifest in several ways, one of which is, say, the visual language. I'm sure everyone's favorite show has a particular way of photographing things. I can remember I guess it was the 1990s, how NYPD Blue made such a splash because, oh my goodness, it's handheld camera everywhere. It's shaking, and it's like a documentary. Oh, that's so exciting. It's like I'm really there. And and you wouldn't pan, for example, anticipating something from happening, because if you were a documentarian, you wouldn't know that it was going to happen. So you wait for some character to talk, and then you go over to find them. And it creates a different subjective experience in the audience. And there are shows today, obviously, that became a staple for many kinds of shows. But as an example, if I were hired to do NYPD Blue, which I didn't have the good fortune to work on, I can't come in and just say, okay, we're going to do this all in lock-offs. We're going to have elegant dolly moves. And you can't do that because, A, you'd be fired, but B, even if you got through the episode, you would not be communicating the way you thought you would think you'd be communicating, because the audience has a different expectation. So how you deviate from those expectations is experienced as a deviation. So they're not just watching that as if it's the first show they've ever seen. They're saying, wait, what's happening? It's eerie. It's still. You might put them in an alert state. Wait, no, that's not what I was trying to do. So you have to honor everything, and also the tone. I feel very privileged to have directed many different genres, from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia to The Wire, and it's each show has its own sensibility. And one of the things I really value about what I get to do is I get to immerse myself in different ways of seeing. But when I enter any show, I have to honor it, and I have to fully absorb its visual language, its tone, its sensibility, how points are made, and you know, that's if you don't do that, you're not serving the story.
Well, you've mentioned that you love Robert Bly,
Yes.
I believe. And so I have just a
Wow.
quote here where he says, "The best presenters have conversations with their audiences." So even if you can't, let's say,
Interesting.
have a conversation with the audience of Homeland or The Wire, you kind of know the pulse of what they want.
Yeah, so I think I didn't get to your question. So your question was, how much do I have to take into account the audience, right? Okay. Yeah, so an audience comes in with a set of expectations, and you know, you don't tune into, you know, The Sopranos and want to watch, you know, ballroom drama, you know. So it's like if you're providing it, and the writers are generally, you know, almost universally very aware of that. So we know we've gone too long without a joke, or we've gone too long without a so-and-so. And so you have to plug into that, because if you don't, you're not serving the show. And that tone, that's where tone can really be a critical factor. Like, for example, I'm trying to think. I was a producer-director on the show Big Love, which was about a polygamous household in Utah, Mormon, the fundamentalist Mormon community. And there were these wonderful actors in it, you know, Bill Paxton, may he rest in peace, and, you know, Chloe Sevigny, and, you know, Jean Triplehorn, and it was just a, you know, wealth of people, and all these dramas happening, as you can imagine, with 3 marriages and 3 wives and 1 guy and all that stuff. But one thing I had to be very mindful of, which the producers were constantly, you know, reinforcing, is, you know, in Utah, they're not a therapy-friendly place. People don't talk about their emotions necessarily. They don't display their emotions a lot. So even though a scene might be rife with rich subtext, you know, if you're shooting it in West Los Angeles, where everybody's been to therapy and is perfectly happy to reveal their feelings, and I want to know what you feel, and this is what I feel. That's not that world. That's not that world. So if you're not attuned to the way, you know, so in a shall we say, even repressed world, or certainly suppressed, you know, people are very guarded, and a lifted eyebrow might be a very startling thing to do, you know. So you have to be sensitized to what, not just what the audience is expecting, but what the world of, you don't want to betray the world of your story.